Greetings, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Amir and I are back again to talk about the latest travel sentiment study research that we've been undertaking jointly for the last 6+ months. My name's Chris Adams. I look after research and insights at Miles Partnership, and I'll pass over to Amir to go through the latest sentiment research, and then I'll come back at the end. Over to you, Amir.
Thank you, Chris. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or depending where you are, as Chris said. And I think, Chris, this is the furthest distance we've had between us. You're currently in New Zealand, and I'm sitting here in Ohio. So gotta love technology. Well, we have the latest data right here for you. Just came out of the field at the end of last week, and we released it earlier this week. Wave 23. I can't believe we've already gone this far. So jumping right into the numbers, you're going to see that the surging cases of coronavirus are beginning to have a little bit of impact on travel sentiment, especially when we're talking about hesitancy to travel. We're going to get into some of that here today. But the big numbers, 66% of travelers that are planning to travel in the next 6 months are changing their travel plans. Just under half have reduced their plans in some form or fashion. Almost 40% have canceled their travels altogether. 1/3 continue to change from flying to driving destinations in their travels. And almost a quarter now are changing international plans to domestic. When we look at the trend lines here, again, you can kind of see we've been hovering around those 2/3 and changing plans for a couple months now. Really don't expect that to go down dramatically until we have more news about a vaccine, quite frankly, there. When we're looking at the trends of canceling travel versus just reducing travel plans, thankfully the reduction plans is still outweighing those canceling travel as we see that. But again, we need to watch this carefully because of over 40 states now reporting significant increases in daily new cases. And that is impacting holiday travel sentiment, of course. When we're looking at upcoming travel plans, again, in terms of the changing to road trips rule, and the data keeps supporting that, and if anything, keeps inching up more and more road trips being planned versus flying trips. And of course, what a great opportunity as many Americans would not be traveling overseas in the near to midterm. You've got a great opportunity to recapture some market share if you play your cards correctly, especially in the regional drive markets where these folks are coming from. And as you know, we can always look at 3 key factors that would impact the decision to travel in the next 6 months. The transportation costs and the concerns about the economy are steadily remaining low, with the fear of coronavirus dominating. We're still just under 50% with fear of coronavirus. You can see we've really been that way for about 3 months now, relatively stable there. Again, that's one of those we think is just kind of stabilized out until there's a vaccine. Even with the rising number of cases, this really hasn't inched downward very much. So I think we're at a certain acceptance level with the pandemic. So we'll see what happens here over the next couple of weeks. If anything changes there, but the economic concerns again continue to hover right around 20% there, the low 20s, very, very low. And of course, we still see that 2/3 of American travelers, despite all the news of surging cases and a lot of advisories out there asking folks to reconsider holiday gatherings, you can see that 2/3 are still planning to travel in the next 6 months. So that pent-up demand continues to be very, very strong. We just want it to release, don't we? Now, this week we asked a question again. We revisited the whole issue of hesitancy. What's keeping those folks, a number of folks, from planning their trip? And you can see, obviously, no surprise there. Just a little bit over half are saying it's primarily because just the fear of contracting or spreading the pandemic. Okay, fine. But then let's look at again here. We've seen, just as we saw a few weeks ago when we asked the same question, lack of clarity for health and safety protocols. Again, clarity of travel restrictions that vary from destination to destination, and so forth. Again, looking at the concern about my personal finances, you can see that's on the lower end of the spectrum. And again, just a tick higher than you saw the earlier slide about concern for the economy. So it's not really about the pocketbook so much in there. But I will say, look at that 1 in 5 near the very bottom there, still saying they're not sure if they're welcome in the destination or interested in visiting. So we need to do a better job of making sure we're communicating the welcome message accordingly within our particular destinations. I do want to call out one little factoid there in the right-hand side. You'll see in the little box that 13% of American travelers really have no qualms about traveling, no hesitation. So there is a cohort that's ready to go no matter what, and there is an opportunity, but it is a very, very small percentage, as you can tell from there. Moving forward, we have the perceptions of safety in travel. When we ask folks about as questions as residents, you can see we're still very much a divided country on the same 3 issues we've been looking at since May about welcoming visitors back to the community, feeling safe traveling outside my community, and shopping and dining locally. But look at the top one. We've added a new variable to this one, which is folks about planning to travel until there's not planning to travel until there's a vaccine readily available. And you can see that 36% of American travelers are telling us basically they're not making any travel plans until there is news of a vaccine that's available. And again, the trend lines in terms of, despite the bad news about new cases going, we still see stabilization and welcoming visitors, but it's still, well below 50% there. And that's really kind of a magical threshold for us. And same thing with feeling safe traveling outside the community. Despite the new surge in cases, it's only inched down a little bit directionally. Not quite a trend yet, but we look at about 3 data points to make a trend. But so it's kind of just starting to inch down. We'll see if that changes here in 2 weeks. And again, same thing with feeling safe dining and shopping locally, relatively consistent there around the 47, 48% for the past month. So people have dipped their toes in the water. A significant portion of the population has now gone out to eat, gone out to shop, and they're doing it again and again. But again, not great enough numbers that we're happy yet. And the industry can recover with limited capacity, et cetera. But it's happening there. So. Anyway, Chris, let me throw it back to you because I think there's a few great things you want to share with everyone here today to think about moving forward.
Yeah, so obviously, as we've been reporting throughout the entire pandemic, the health numbers inevitably link to the travel numbers. And so with this fall surge, obviously that's weighing down on what was a sort of tentative and somewhat uneven recovery in travel sentiment. And we're likely to see that over the coming months. Travelers are still looking for ways to travel where possible. For example, substituting air for drive or international for domestic. But there's no doubt that a tough few months loom. And so obviously focusing on how we can support local businesses that are particularly exposed to a drop in tourism is going to be absolutely central. So that's activating your locals, past visitors, prospective visitors to support businesses and platforms like Facebook and Google and others, plus of course the great work that destinations are doing through their own platforms are all really important ways to call for that support. And then we've talked about it before, Amir, clear, consistent health and safety information. Wherever possible, we don't want confusion to be an impediment to travel. So that's consistency across the board in terms of county, city, and businesses, all on the same page around things like mandatory mask wearing. So
important, and still quite a lack of clarity there. You absolutely agree.
Yeah, so we'll come back to you in a couple of weeks. Just a quick update on our Funding Futures project. I think most people should be aware we've undertaken this very large research project with Civitas Tourism Economics, and we've been collaborating, in fact, with a group in Europe as well. And on November the 10th, we're having a transatlantic webinar looking at the findings of the European study combined with the findings of the US study. And actually on November the 3rd, we've got a more immediate webinar on dedicated funding and tax increment financing. So go to the Funding Futures site for that. And plus we've got all of the resources on both the Longwoods and Miles sites. So thanks, Amir, for joining us today. Thank you. And we'll be connecting with you in a couple of weeks. Okay.
All right, very good. Yeah.